Don't forget to like and subscribe, share, comment, all that fun stuff. It's also important to talk about the fact that there's actually party infighting that is happening, and this needs to be squashed. This needs to not happen. But there's a perfect example of this right here, which is from my friend, Brett Galashevsky, who works for Turning Point Action. And this is a quick one-off story I just want to talk about because he texted me about this earlier this week. He works for Turning Point Action, which did a lot of work. They basically got Senator Ron Johnson elected in 2022. And then they also basically single-handedly brought the most workforce into Wisconsin to help Trump win that by a pretty narrow margin and deliver those 10 electoral votes in 2024 for Trump. So Brett Galashevsky says, take a look at this proposed Wisconsin GOP constitutional amendment for 2025. No member of an executive committee may be employed by a 501c4 organization. That's what it says in this, which is actually what Turning Point Action is. So no member of an executive committee. So that means people that are working at higher levels within the state party, like being an executive chairman or something like that, can be employed. So they can't work for a 501c4 organization. They can't work for Turning Point Action. This would immediately disqualify any activist that works so tirelessly with action to save Wisconsin. This roadblocks a number. And so we can actually read it right here. It says to create a new article, no member of the executive committee shall work for a 501c4, which is a political action committee or independent expenditure committee at any time during their tenure. Any conflict of interest at this time of nomination and therefore must be disclosed. If an executive committee member becomes employed or contracted, their resignation is automatic and their office shall be vacant. Might as well call it the Brett rule because Brett has worked tirelessly and honestly, I would say is the catalyst for the change that we have seen in Wisconsin. I'm curious what clip he has with Trump.
Turning Point's grassroots army. It's an army. They turned out to vote, and they voted in record numbers, and everybody else voted in record numbers too, I have to tell you. And we did something that was really epic. We won a battle that a lot of people thought was very hard to win. You know?
So Donald Trump credits part of his win to Turning Point Action, and yet the Wisconsin GOP is trying to kick out people who work for Turning Point Action from their executive committee. They don't want them to have any governing authority within their party. Turning Point Action delivered 131,276 ballots, minimum. Turning Point Action did. Now, if we look at Wisconsin's 2024 election results, let's take a look at this. So remember that number right there, 131,276. Then we actually look at the election results and the difference in this election right here. You can see the numbers down here. The difference in the election was 1,697,000 to 1,667,000. So the difference in this election between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, those 10 electoral votes in Wisconsin, one of the swing states, was approximately 30,000 votes. And so I remind you that Turning Point Action delivered 131,000 votes. Turning Point Action won Wisconsin for Trump. And yet Wisconsin is trying to disqualify any member of their executive committee to also be affiliated with Turning Point Action. Now, what this is, you might be saying, why? If they basically won, why, Kevin? Why? I had the same question. Well, I talked with Brett on the phone earlier today. He's actually, you want to know what Brett's doing right now? You want to know what Brett's doing? Brett is currently helping train phone bankers for parties. He's helping train people to make phone calls for parties. That's what he's doing right now because he works so tirelessly to help win elections. For ungrateful, old school Republicans that are mad that their way of losing, which is what the Republican Party had been doing for over a decade, essentially, their old way of go along to get along and compromise on fundamental beliefs to basically sacrifice everything that being a conservative stands for some inkling of power. They're mad That turning point, which challenges the status quo, which pushes for a new era of republicanism, is challenging their complacency. And that's what's at the heart of it, is complacency. And so what I bring this in for is to talk about what we have in store for the next 4 years, at least. You got to remember, there are never Trumpers. There are people that claim to be Republicans that suffer from a bad case of TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. And so when you have people that are going through such a terrible illness that still hold positions of power, you get things like this in Wisconsin, and infighting. And so what will we get? We will get gotcha, jaded questions and allegations and attacks from the left, while also having the enemy within. Infighting from those who post-Trump want to restore the old guard. And that's exactly what they're trying to do right here, is saying, okay, you did what we wanted. We got the people elected that we wanted, and we used your resources, your energy, your new style, but we're going to go back to the complacent go along to get along. We don't really have any values. We don't really have any actual beliefs. We're just going to sit on our hands and collect our money. That's essentially what they're trying to do there. And that's one thing that is going to be in store for us coming up soon in this next 4 years.